The group Dotcom boom, the 2008 crash was the greatest jolt to the global financial system in almost a century. It pushed the world's banking system towards the edge of collapse. We explore the causes and the consequences of the crash and ask how will history remember the crisis? What caused the financial crash? It's early 2000s and investors are looking for a new safe source of return. Stocks and bonds are still pretty popular, but the tech bubble of the turn of the century showed them that getting your money back from bankrupt firms can be a bit difficult. But what about mortgages? The loan you take out when you want to buy a home. That's right, mortgages. After all mortgage lenders, these loans are a lot like a bonds with bonuses. You receive regular interest payments, and if the borrower defaults, you get possession of their house, which is handy fallback, because with real estate prices on the rise recovering, your losses is no problem. But investors don't want to buy individual mortgages. That's where investment banks come in. These institutions with their large capital and industry expertise decide to buy mountains of mortgages from lenders, pool them together, and then sell shares of the pool to investors as mortgage-backed securities, which means the home buyers now pay investors their mortgage payments. Ain't that nifty, investors sure. Soon enough, people are flocking to investment banks to buy up their securities, and it's not just banks doing this. The government, in an attempt to boost mortgage lending, is using the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to sponsor the corporations do the same thing. Soon enough, lenders are facing a seemingly endless demand for the mortgage, which they are more than happy to part with, because every time they sell the rights to their interest payments, they get their money back, which they can loan out again. So mortgage lending and home buy and kick into hyperdrive, and investors gain pretty rich in the process. But other companies, since the gravity train running dull speed in the investment space, are feeling left out, and the insurers wanting to cash in too begin to sell credit default swaps, derivatives that pay out mortgage borrower default. It looks like a foolproof way of making money. In fact, why stop at just one policy per property when there are speculators interested in buying them? Sure, selling 10 policies on the same mortgage may seem excessive and dangerous, but so long as we don't experience a collapse in the real estate market, it's free money. Soon enough, the amount of credit insured jumps from $900 billion to over $62 trillion, and what we probably don't have enough money to cover that. So long as things keep tracking along, insurers are making bank and all is right in the world. With rising housing supporting this great supply team that we've created, or at least that's what's supposed to be happy. But something changed. Because lenders are selling their loans, they've lost all incentive to avoid risk. With such a high demand with their mortgages, they are starting to give loans to borrowers with bad credit scores and low income. And hold on a sec.
Some those subprime are predatory. Don't be fooled, borrower, that may look like a low-interest mortgage, but it's chock full of terrible conditions. But the subprime borrowers don't seem to notice the fine print, and soon enough everyone is buying a home, despite them having no possible way of paying off their mortgage. Investment banks are still gobbling up whatever the lenders are throwing at them, mean that these taking time bombs are making their way into the MBS owned by investors. But that's not all. Investment banks are selling collateralized debt obligations similar to the NBS, but riskier, and claiming that they are virtually risk-free even as they fill up with these toxic assets. But that's not all again. This way they're only being sold. Many mortgages to invest in people are using complex derivative investment like synthetic CDOs to vet even more on whether people will make the mortgage payments, which is, in case you haven't noticed, is becoming less likely. Now surely the rating agencies will notice the heightened default risk and let investors know, hey, by the way, your holdings are full of crap. But wait, are you kidding? Triple safety rating? Well, everyone, we've done it. We don't have a system where the lenders don't care about whether mortgage payments are made. Investment bankers don't care about risk. In the rating agencies designed for the people but paid for by the banks, don't care about investors. And for a while, this web of liability and risk holds firm, but it's only a matter of time before the subprimes start to default. By October 2007, 3% of all U.S. home loans are in the foreclosure process. with another 7% 1 month past due. Mortgage investments are starting to turn into real estate, and investment banks are flooding the market with foreclosed homes. Soon enough supply certain LPS demand, and in 2008, housing prices do something that nobody prepared for. They start to freak off, and so begins the domino effect that was a 2008 financial crisis. Finance companies involved in the real estate game take hit, and despite 75% of CDOs receiving the highest safety rating, 70% of them default. The investment banks seen carnage they have caused, stop buying mortgages from lenders, and the insurers find themselves facing impossible payouts. Banks, lenders, and merchants start shut down, and despite the government trying to save the largest players from the brink of destruction, on September 15th we see the largest bankruptcy in US history as Lehman Brothers, an investment bank with $600 billion in assets, goes under.
What were the consequences of the financial crisis? In the short term, an enormous bailout, governments pumping billions into striking banks averted a complete collapse of the financial system. The crisis was the worst U.S. economic disaster since the Great Depression. In the United States, the stock market plummeted, wiping out nearly $8 trillion in value between late 2007 and 2009. Unemployment climbed, peaking at 10% in October 2009. Americans lost $9.8 trillion in wealth as their home values plummeted and their retirement accounts vaporized. In all, the Great Recession led to a loss of more than $2 trillion in global economic growth, or a drop of nearly 4% between the pre-recession peak in the second quarter of 2008. In the long term, the impact of the crash has been enormous: depressed wages and deep political instability. What about the housing market? The housing market was ground zero of the crisis. The market crashed as homeowners with subprime and other troublesome loans defaulted at record levels. Home prices dropped and the millions lost their homes to foreclosure. The market has largely recovered, with home prices rising and far fewer people behind on their mortgages. Regulators have also established new restrictions on the types of loan banks could offer. And also, the banking sector, in the financial sector affected by causing banks to lose money on mortgage defaults, interbank lending to freeze, and so on. And also, the financial crisis impacted banking by spawning new regulatory actions.